we're going live. But without further ado, allow me to invite you to the very interesting world of psychology, where nearly everything is up for debate. Today, I would like us to discuss the topic of, no surprises there, insanity of being sane. Seeing as insanity is pretty much the complete opposite of being sane, let's see what that really means. In my conquest to try and find a definition, I have stumbled upon three of them, each one a bit different from the other. So, what does it mean to be sane? Having a healthy mind and not being mentally ill, according to the wonderful Cambridge Dictionary. All I can say about that is we shall see. Next, showing good judgment and understanding, once again according to the Cambridge Dictionary. And for now, let's leave it at that. We'll come back to it. And the third definition is knowing the difference between right and wrong according to the WEX definitions team. And you might be interested to know that this is the definition we used while practicing the law. Now, I would like to draw your attention to the two latter definitions. Showing good judgment and understanding and knowing the difference between right and wrong. Both of them rely on the difference between right and wrong and being able to judge what is good and what is bad. Now, that is quite problematic because what does good and what does bad mean? This is a very personal and subjective dilemma, really topic. So, just to prove my point, I would like to use the little story of a single parent, let's say a single father, who has to feed his three starving children. Of course, this story takes place in biblical times, so there is no state or welfare benefit for the unemployed. And so, this poor father, who cannot afford to buy simple necessities such as bread for his children, goes out and steals some. And, well, the question is, uh, did he do something good? Well, not perfectly fine, but good enough, or did he do something wrong? Well, some of you might say that, well, his primary responsibility as a parent is to feed his children, while others might say that stealing is unacceptable under any circumstance. All right, now that being said, uh, these two definitions rely, like I said, on the very personal interpretation of good and bad, which undermines the universality of these definitions. So, why is it impossible to be perfectly sane? Well, mainly because the definition of being sane relies on very susceptible to personal interpretation uh, items, such as good and bad. But before we move any further, I would like to ask you four questions. And if you think you would answer yes to the question being presented, please do raise your hand, give me some data to work with. So the first question is, do you remember the last time you lied? Well, I do. Guilty as charged, I must admit, unfortunately. Next, do you sometimes repeat the opinions of others? Well, unfortunately, caught red-handed again. Next, are you prone to boredom? Oh, extremely. And next, would you say you are impulsive? Oh, I would. I mean, impulse buying is a thing, apparently. But for now, I would like you to pay attention to these questions and keep them in mind for just a little while. But moving on, I would like to introduce to you four traits of a psychopath coming from the AIR checklist. Pathological lying, superficial charm or glibness, need for stimulation, and last but not least, impulsivity. So, do these ring a bell? They should, because these are precisely the traits I have asked you about in the four questions I presented just a moment ago. And, well, some of you answered yes to at least two or three of these questions. Now, does that mean we're all psychopaths here? Well, obviously not. And why am I saying this? Uh, let me give you a little bit of a background. There is a rise, a tendency, let's say, on the rise, with people self-diagnosing or diagnosing their loved ones, people related to them, really potato, it's the same thing, or just people surrounding them, based on a 3-minute clip seen on YouTube or a reel seen on Instagram, or people try to educate themselves and or just have fun, and they watch Silence of the Lambs, for example, and they identify themselves with Hannibal Lecter. I don't know why you would want to do that, but that's okay. Or they watch The American Psycho, with Patrick Bateman, and they identify themselves with him. And this is a wonderful time to clarify that any psychological evaluation can only be conducted by a trained psychiatrist or a psychologist with sufficient knowledge, with sufficient tools such as the AIR checklist, and more on that later, and only after extensive hours spent with the subject. Oh, a fly is attacking me all of a sudden. I don't know why. But moving on, let's not get distracted. Well, I did, but anyway. And only after sufficient hours spent with the patient during sessions. And that being said, while we are all a bit crazy, might I say, and that's totally okay, we do exhibit some traits of a psychopath at some level. And let's keep that in mind for now. But moving on, I promised I would say more about the AIR checklist, and now is the wonderful time to do just that. The full name is Psychopathy Checklist Revised, PCR-R for short. What is it? Well, it's a checklist, obviously. And why have I been referring to it as the AIR checklist for all this time? Well, twice, really. Because it was created by Robert D. Eyre in the 1980s. It is a checklist, like I said, and it consists of 20 traits, characteristics, questions, name it what you will. And in each category or trait, you can be assigned 1 or 2 points for a total of 40. And just as a fun fact, to be considered a clinical psychopath in the US, one would have to earn 30 points, while in the UK, the threshold is a bit lower. It's 25 points, and I by no means want to attack the government of the UK or the US. Like I said, it's just a fun fact that I found interesting, and I thought you might too. But seeing as the main topic of this wonderful event is Eye on the Future, let's touch upon that. Modern psychiatrists and psychologists haven't really been able to develop anything better than the Psychopathy Checklist Revised, created in the 1980s, by the way, which just proves how big of a brain Robert D. Eyre had. And instead of trying to come up with something brand new, what they are trying to do is just improve on this checklist. And, well, I think that's it, really. The research is still going on. They're still trying to find a better way. But it's time for the grand finale. And the first conclusion I want to make is, well, it has been hidden in plain sight all along. Well, because we do exhibit some traits of a psychopath at some level, and yet we are considered sane by society, which means being sane requires some insanity. And this is a double-edged sword, because let us imagine a person who never lies, never manipulates, doesn't hold any grudges. If they are hit in the face by somebody, instead of being enraged and trying to fight back, they think, oh, what a horrible day that person must have had. What can I do to make them feel better? Well, a person like that doesn't exist, never did and never will, which is why we have to imagine them. But let's imagine they did. I claim this person would be locked away in a mental institution to be studied and declared insane. And now it's time for the third and final conclusion, which really derives from the two previous ones. Being sane, at the core of it, really just means doing what everyone else is doing. And that's all I have prepared for you today. Thank you for your attention. I give thanks to the wonderful organizers, without whom this would have been, of course, impossible. But before I give my final goodbye, in case you are interested in further pursuing this topic, or you want to educate yourselves on it any further, here are the sources I have used in this presentation. And, well, that really is now everything I have prepared for you today. Thank you once again for your attention. In return for that, I hope I didn't bore you all to death. And, yeah, that's it. See you around.